Thanks for tuning in. If your organisation does not reflect the diversity and representation of the clients you serve, your clients may well look elsewhere, where they'll be represented and where they can find employees who better anticipate their needs and provide excellent service. In the modern working world, attracting and retaining our best employees is very difficult. With so many options available to them, employees are seeking workplaces with a good social impact, purpose, and the ability to provide a work-life balance. In hard cash terms, the more your turnover and attrition, the more it costs your business. It's essential to foster an inclusive culture that respects people for who they are, empowers them, gives them a sense of belonging, and allows them to progress. I really appreciate the time that you're taking out to join me on this tutorial. You're in the right place if you want your organisation to be diverse, represent the people and the communities in which you operate, and to have an inclusive culture where everyone can succeed regardless of their circumstances. In this tutorial, I'm sharing with you a lot of great advice and guidance that I share with my clients every single day through my consultancy, research, and advice and training that I provide to them. Now, you may want to grab a pen and paper or open the Notes app on your phone, because what I'm about to share with you today will help you accelerate your diversity and inclusion journey. At the end of this video, I'll share with you how you can have a conversation with me and my team so that you can apply what you're about to learn to your own organisation. However, if you don't want that conversation, you will also be able to download a helpful cheat sheet to simplify and clarify the needs for diversity and inclusion in your business at the end of this video. In this tutorial, I will share with you what you must do first to ensure that your organisation has a solid foundation going forwards. I've developed a whole framework for equality, diversity, and inclusion principles, which is my inclusive growth framework, and a methodology to implement this in your organisation, which is called the Inclusive Growth Flywheel. Equality, diversity, and inclusion can be a bit of a mouthful, so going forwards, I'm simply going to say EDI. I'm Toby Milden, and I'm a diversity and inclusion architect and author. I will just introduce myself before I get into the main thrust of this tutorial, so that you can get to know my background and how I ended up working in the field of EDI. Following university, I worked as an IT consultant for Accenture. I implemented software into NHS hospitals for Cerner Corporation, and I ended up as a project manager at the BBC, working on the BBC News website, BBC Sounds app, and various accessibility projects. I used to work very closely with the Chief Operating Officer of the BBC's technology department, and he, with the rest of the senior leadership team, were concerned about the gender imbalance within the technology department. At the time, the BBC as a whole had a 50-50 split between men and women, but we were nowhere close to this in technology and engineering. I worked with the senior leadership team to develop and implement our gender balance action plan. Our primary focus was getting more women into technology roles and enabling people to advance their careers within technology. Having been born with a rare neuromuscular disability myself, and as a full-time wheelchair user, and needing 24-hour care, I've got experience of my own barriers in trying to enter the workplace and advancing my career. There have been physical barriers like inaccessible public transport in getting to and from work, and there have also been attitudinal barriers, like the time that I was banned from my clients' offices because they said that I was a fire risk in my wheelchair. When I worked for the BBC, I also chaired the BBC Ability Disabled Staff Network to represent disabled employees within the corporation. In light of this, I was naturally interested in reducing inequalities within the modern workplace. I could see that if you removed speed humps and roadblocks to fully participating in the workplace, then individuals thrived and teams prospered. This is a win-win situation for your people, your clients, and your business performance. I jumped at the chance to work in the newly created Diversity and Inclusion Centre of Excellence within the HR team, and to take on additional responsibilities for other BBC's divisions, including corporate services, radio, as well as technology. After 10 years of working at the BBC, I wanted to move back into the corporate sector. The business case for EDI at the BBC is pretty straightforward. The BBC is funded by the licence fee payer, so everyone deserves to see themselves reflected and represented in the content that they produce. However, I was really curious as to why one of the big four accountancy firms was so concerned with EDI, so I went to go and find out. I went on to work for Deloitte, who focused on culture change and creating a culture of respect and inclusion, as they put it. EDI work is perhaps one of the most challenging roles that I've taken on, albeit one of the most meaningful and purposeful things I've ever done. Over the several years of working in this sector, I've observed and heard numerous frustrations from other EDI leaders and practitioners inside companies, as well as the clients that I work with now as a trusted advisor and as a consultant to them. It was upon hearing a number of these frustrations that led me to writing my first book, Inclusive Growth. I wrote this book because I wanted to reframe EDI for businesses. I wanted us to move away from treating EDI as a box-ticking exercise, a tokenistic PR activity, or simply window dressing, or leaving business leaders feeling as though they should be doing something because their competitors are doing it. I wanted organisations to understand that if they represent the diversity of their customer base, are able to appeal to diverse talent pools available to them, and to the communities in which they're based in, and that they have a work environment or culture where people feel respected for who they truly are, that they belong to the organisation, that they can progress unhindered, and feel empowered that their organisation can only grow and prosper. To me, this is inclusive growth. I asked my clients and other diversity and inclusion practitioners why they were so concerned about the lack of representation and EDI in their organisation, and the same topics kept coming up time and time again. The list of things that I'm about to share with you are considered black hat thinking. These are the types of things that organisations want to avoid or move away from. They were concerned about groupthink and the negative impact that this has on making effective decisions and lack of innovation and creativity that could help them deliver better products and services and reach new markets. They were also concerned about employee retention and attrition, and by not having a work environment where people feel respected or that they belong, that they simply leave the organisation. And this costs the business money in terms of agency fees, management time recruiting, productivity costs of the person leaving your organisation, and the cost of your new employee getting up to speed when they first join you. They were also concerned about employee progression and not getting the best out of their people. Also, they were really worried about being on the receiving end of negative headlines like we've seen with Uber and Brewdog. This is incredibly damaging for the employer brand, which makes attracting talent even more difficult. On the flip side, many organisations that I talk to have yellow hat thinking, where they think about the things that they want to gain, opportunities to grab, and a positive direction to go in. Now you'll probably notice that these are just the opposite of black hat thinking that I shared with you just now, but with an additional item to consider. So as a result of diverse perspectives and experiences, they want greater innovation and creativity and ideas. Through an inclusive culture, they want their employees to stay around for longer and be able to thrive and progress regardless of their background or circumstances. It's important for them to be seen as an excellent place to work in order to attract the best talent going forwards. And lastly, it simply seems like the right thing to do for some leaders. Fairness is an innate human value, and the United Nations focuses on reducing inequalities, gender equality, and decent work and economic growth for everybody, and for many business leaders that I speak to who want to support these goals. So congruence with organisational values is really key to them. But when I spoke with these same contacts, I kept hearing time and time again a number of reasons for not shifting the dial on diversity and inclusion. Previous approaches like events or training haven't really had a major impact on culture. People delivering diversity and inclusion initiatives were overwhelmed with work, chasing their tails, spreading themselves too thinly, and some of their projects felt superficial and not really getting to the core of the issue. It's really seen as a HR problem, and other departments aren't sharing responsibility. It's seen as the people agenda item, and other departments like marketing, procurement, facilities management and the like don't really understand their role in improving EDI. You just don't have enough data to make smart decisions or create robust strategy. I should have probably started with this one first, because it's the number one issue that many of my clients face. There is often a lack of diversity demographic data to measure the representation of your organisation and to really understand where diversity is falling out of business processes like recruitment or promotions. And the focus has been on raising your profile externally and not really on internal culture. Lots of organisations are focusing on winning awards, contributing to industry press, and changing the colour of their logo during LGBTQ month, for instance. Whilst this positions your business in a positive light, there are still individuals in the organisations that face behaviours that make them feel like they don't belong, or business processes and systems that contain implicit bias, and we call this the rhetoric gap. You get very little support from senior leadership team who aren't really taking enough accountability for EDI. I find that this is partly due to senior leaders not really understanding your unique business case for EDI, or inclusive growth, as how I like to put it. And you get little support from your senior leadership team who aren't really taking enough accountability for EDI. I find that this is partly due to senior leaders not really understanding your unique business case for EDI, or inclusive growth, as I like to put it with my clients. But also, senior leaders often suffer from imposter syndrome, finding it difficult to connect with the topic. A client once said to me that, as a straight white guy himself, who am I to talk about LGBT issues during Pride Month a few years ago? But after talking to me, he understood the need for him as a senior leader in his company to be an ally for LGBT staff, especially after the LGBT staff in his organisation were telling us that they felt particularly disenfranchised in a survey that we conducted. And finally, there is no change management system in place to evaluate your progress. I learnt this from my IT project management days. As I implemented new IT systems, I made sure that I understood who our stakeholders were. I had a delivery roadmap, I managed risks and issues, and I was very clear about what success looked like. When I moved into EDI, I found that this was very often missing. Many times I found myself chasing my own tail, spreading myself too thinly, not knowing if what I was doing or what I was working on was actually going to shift the dial on EDI. As someone once said, what gets measured gets done or managed, and this is very true for EDI. To influence the right change within your organisation, you have to be very clear about what success looks like, or return on effort, and your very practical steps to take. Having outlined the challenges that you may face with a lack of EDI in your organisation and the frustrations that many business leaders experience whilst trying to implement sustainable change, I will share with you now how you can accelerate change in your organisation. When I wrote my book, Inclusive Growth, I wanted to convey the best practices for implementing diversity and inclusion in a sustainable way. If we want positive, sustainable change, then we need to work with a set of solid principles rather than short-term tactics that don't really make a dent. For this, I created the Inclusive Growth Framework, which is detailed in my first book, Inclusive Growth, which is available on Amazon and as an audiobook on Audible and Spotify. Somebody read my book recently and sent me a lovely message on LinkedIn, which really made my day. And she said, I've just finished reading your book, and my lovely sage green kitchen is now a shade of yellow from all the post-it notes that I've scattered all over. I wanted to say thank you. Your book has given me some reflection time, which I've had a huge absence of, to truly consider how I shape a successful strategy. So I just wanted to share that with you because it really made my day. So in the book, I cover these 7 areas of best practice. First of all, clarity. You must be really clear on why diversity and inclusion is important, what kind of language gains traction in your organisation, and how leadership can truly take accountability and for building an inclusive culture in your business. Culture. You must understand the importance of culture over tactics and learn how organisations can define and create their own inclusive culture that stands the test of time. Change. You must learn how crucial it is to treat diversity and inclusion like any other change programme within your organisation if you want to drive long-term results. Colleague experience. You must discover how to re-engineer systems to make them more inclusive. Several organisations try to fix individuals to make them fit in and make them a quote-unquote culture fit for the organisation. This is in opposition to your desire to have a diverse workforce that brings in multiple perspectives and lived experiences so that you can be more innovative, creative, and better prepared to develop solutions for your clients. This is a really key component of the model and helps to hardwire inclusion into your organisation. Cyber. You must explore how your workplace can leverage the power of technology, such as artificial intelligence, to create more inclusive recruitment processes, for example, and ensure that any technology that you use is accessible for your clients and for your employees. Collaboration. In order to create inclusive workplaces, your organisation must collaborate with others in your industry, from strategic outsourcing partners to your customers. You will also need to collaborate across your organisation so that HR does not become overburdened with EDI responsibilities. And finally, celebration. You must communicate inclusive success and best practices effectively, demonstrating how important inclusive workplaces are to the public and to prospective employees. Now, I would love to share with you the best practices in all of these 7 areas of my inclusive growth model, but I'll just focus on the first one to get you started. Now, there's probably a lot of things demanding your time and attention right now, so I understand that you're extremely busy, and because of this, it's really important to take our time and focus on the most important things first. If you're interested in diving deeper into these 7 areas of my inclusive growth model, then I would highly recommend picking up a copy of my book, which explores this in great detail. Now, the book is available on paperback, Kindle version, or audiobook, so you can choose the format that best works for you. One of the main obstacles for implementing EDI is not having your senior leadership team fully on board and driving the agenda from the top. They need to be accountable as well. Even if senior leaders are on the board and willing to drive challenge from the top, they may be baffled by how to effectively achieve it. They worry about failing to follow best practices, putting a foot in it, or inadvertently leaving out people because of blind spots. They need an advisor and a critical friend who can guide them on their journey. Quite often, there's activity occurring at the lower echelons of your organisations, such as employee resource groups or diversity networks organising events, but then they just feel unsupported because management doesn't provide them with the time or the resources to deliver anything meaningful. Blocks can also occur in the middle of your organisation, with your head of HR trying to assemble an EDI plan, but being pulled in all sorts of directions, unable to focus due to all of the competing demands on their time and attention. Often they're occupied with urgent and important matters, like responding to employee incidents or making recurring HR decisions like performance reviews, bonus rounds, and quarterly budgeting. So you really need to know and use your senior leaders' team's preferred language and be aware of their inhibiting part of the brain. I find that the most heads of HR and senior business leaders think about diversity and inclusion in a very rational and cognitive way. Quite a few of the leaders that I work with are employed because of their amazing minds, so cognitive activity comes really naturally to them. I often ask them why diversity and inclusion are important to the future of their organisation, and they often quote with interesting statistics like companies with the more diverse management reporting 19% higher revenues, or when considering a job offer, 67% of people saying that a diverse workforce is a critical factor to them, or that diversity of thought enables groups to identify risks and reduce them by up to 30%, or companies with a more D&I in their workplace reducing their labour turnover by 22%. Prospective clients frequently tell me that they have read the McKinsey reports, which are called Diversity Wins: How Inclusion Matters from 2020, and before that, Delivering Through Diversity in 2018. and before that their first report, Why Diversity Matters, which they wrote in 2015. The logical way of thinking in your organisation, however, can be cultural. Professional services and accountancy, for example, have a very logical, data-driven and evidence-based culture. Those I speak to in these types of organisations love data and charts. There are also senior leaders and cultures that place a greater emphasis on people. Essentially, they're trying to figure out how they would like employees to feel at the end of each day. For example, they might want their people to feel proud that they work for you. Some people may have a personal connection to inequality and exclusion. For instance, they themselves might be from a minority background, or they may feel worried about the future of their children. Maybe one of their children is transgender, and they're worried about them fitting in at work in the future. And when I worked at the BBC, it was a very creative environment, where the currency was ideas, innovations, storytelling, and engaging with audiences. As a leader in your company, you must understand the language that sticks. That alone is a revelation to many of my clients. They've been having difficulty getting senior leaders to acknowledge EDI in their organisation, but it's the result of the way and the language and the approach that they've used to date. If you work in a logical and rational environment, you may well benefit from data and reason, or a creative and innovative environment where emotions and storytelling will resonate for you. You also need to be aware of the part of the brain that holds back a lot of senior leaders from implementing EDI in their organisation. It's our other than consciousness. Living here is the imposter syndrome, like the straight senior leader I spoke about earlier who had difficulty discussing LGBT issues within his organisation, or the fear of saying or doing something wrong that might embarrass us or others. In addition, we've all got implicit biases. These are the stereotypes, the assumptions, or the stories we make up about people before we really get to know them. To be an inclusive leader, you must be aware of your biases and blind spots and to learn how to overcome them. If you know what language resonates in your organisation, you can build a unique business case for EDI by starting with your why. Regardless of what language sticks with you and how our other than consciousness affects your decision making and choices unintentionally, instantaneously, and automatically moment to moment, you need to pinpoint exactly why diversity and inclusion are important to your business, to future-proof your organisation in light of our rapidly diversifying, evolving, and developing society. Simon Sinek, who's the author of Start With Why, is famous for saying, "People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it." Or as I like to tell my clients, people don't buy into what you do, they buy into why you do it. Now grab a pen and paper or open the Notes app on your phone, because I want to play the 5 whys game with you right now. To find out your why for EDI is so crucial for the future of your business. Now you'll be really familiar with this game if you've got a toddler in your life asking you why over and over again. Now I'll give you an example of what one of my prospective clients who works in the engineering and aeronautical industry told me in their discovery consultation with me. Please write your answer down to this question. Why is a diverse workforce and an inclusive environment important to your organisation? Write down the first thing that comes to your mind. Please don't overthink it. Follow with your gut instinct for now. The company in the engineering and aeronautical industry that I told you about told me that they wanted to be viewed as a great place to work. Now ask yourself, why do you want the thing that you just wrote down? We need to go a bit deeper on this. So I asked my prospective client why they wanted to be a great place to work, and they said that they wanted people to feel safe and to be able to speak up if something went wrong. So we need to go a bit deeper again. Write down why you want the last thing that you noted. So for my prospective client, I asked them why safety was so important to them. They explained to me that they work in the critical industry providing components for aircraft and that they want to avoid errors or aircraft falling out of the sky. Their words to me were literally, "We want to avoid death." Now that we have your 3 whys, we can move on to the next. The last thing that you wrote down, why is it that you want that? So when I asked my prospective client why they should avoid errors that would ultimately lead to death, something that seemed really obvious to me, they simply replied that they have a responsibility towards their communities. And last but not by least, please write down why you want the last thing that you wrote down. You should now have a core reason for enhancing EDI in your organisation. If it doesn't feel right for you right at this time, please don't worry about it. If it doesn't feel quite right for you, please don't worry. You just might need to let this idea percolate for you a little bit longer and then fine-tune it later on. Or perhaps you think, bingo, that's exactly the reason why EDI is so crucial to us and to the future of our organisation. You should also be able to identify right now whether this is logical, rational, or emotional thought for you, as well as whether it's yellow hat or black hat language that I was talking about earlier. So now that you have this understanding, what should you do next? To achieve a diverse workforce and inclusive culture in a holistic and sustainable way, I developed the Inclusive Growth Framework to examine the core principles behind achieving a diverse workforce. This framework, however, does not explain what you need to do. There is another tool that you need to be aware of. You need a methodology, and that's where I brought in the Inclusive Growth Flywheel. It's important to understand that there are 3 types of organisations that typically use the flywheel, and hopefully one of these organisations will resonate with you. Firstly, there's the frustrated organisations who've taken steps in their EDI journey already, but they're frustrated that they're not making the desired impact. This flywheel allows them to pause, take stock, and pursue a different approach, which hopefully has a greater impact. The second type of organisations are the beginners. These are the organisations that have an understanding of how EDI is essential to the future success of their organisation, and they can't afford to waste any time, money, or effort in improving their culture of the organisation. To make a difference, they want a proven method. And then thirdly, there's the reset organisations. These are the organisations that have had a successful EDI strategy to date, but they want to take it to the next level and to reset their strategy accordingly. As I said earlier, and it's in the third principle of my Inclusive Growth Framework, you should learn how crucial it is to treat diversity and inclusion like any other change program within your organisation. This is what the Inclusive Growth Flywheel intends to do. Stage 1 is assess. Many organisations rush into solutions mode, but they do so without enough data and people insights, and as a result, they spend a great deal amount of time and energy solving the wrong problem. In order to understand what's really going on in your organisation and what challenges need to be addressed, first, you need to start collecting data from your people. Stage 2 is planning. After you have a good set of data and insights, you can begin to put the building blocks for change in place. Leadership needs to be crystal clear on why diversity and inclusion are so important to the organisation, and to be able to articulate this in a vision statement. A benchmarking exercise is necessary to determine how well you're performing now in terms of EDI management and techniques, and where gaps are to be filled. And then you can devise a 3-year strategy where you can help to achieve your goals. And now for stage 3, implementation. By now, you'll understand why EDI is important to your business, to have a strategy based on evidence and data. However, you need a consistent way of implementing it in your organisation. It's important to develop a roadmap that outlines what you will deliver, who will deliver what, by what date you will deliver, and the constraints of your resources. Those organisations who don't adhere to this structure or use it carelessly invite themselves to the following problems. 1. Using the wrong data and insights from your employees, which gives you inaccurate results, and using the wrong questions, which can offend your team. 2. Not considering the breadth of diversity and inclusion management best practices and missing out on critical success factors. 3. Therefore, strategies developed that emphasises the wrong activities and doesn't really increase diversity and inclusion. 4. Consequently, certain individuals or groups in the organisation end up feeling overlooked and underappreciated. And then finally, the fifth point, that the end result will be a waste of time, energy, and resources. I'm here to help you move to the next level of diversity and inclusion now that you have a clear understanding of how language and behaviour impacts engagement, how you can engage senior leaders and take accountability for EDI, what your unique reason is for wanting to increase diversity and inclusion in your organisation, and how you can apply a structured approach to increasing diversity and inclusion. I'd like to do this by having a tailored planning session with you, and you'll get the benefit of this planning session if you're the key person driving diversity and inclusion in your organisation, and you are ultimately responsible for putting this into action. You're really passionate about wanting to work in a diverse workforce and having an inclusive culture, but taking action and not just relying on your passion is really important to you. This is something that you don't want to do alone, so you're happy to bring in colleagues at the earliest opportunity, like your employee resource groups or your senior leadership team. That taking action now is your priority. You want to accelerate your process. This is an urgent matter for your organisation at the moment. You're leaning on an open door with your senior leadership team who also want a diverse and inclusive organisation. Now, they may be aware that they have blind spots and are confused about how to increase diversity and inclusion, but they're open to receiving support and guidance and access to best practices so that they can increase their chances of success. And finally, it's for you if you want to implement diversity and inclusion holistically in your organisation, that you like my inclusive growth approach and that you want to build long-term sustainable change. Now, unfortunately, this session won't work for you if you aren't responsible for EDI in your business. Your senior leadership team doesn't support you. That at this point, you don't have the budget or resources to really affect meaningful change. That you're focusing on short-term interventions right now, and rather than taking action, you're just seeking inspiration and knowledge, and that you want to pick my brains. If this is the case for you, it's not that I can't or won't help you, but the planning session just won't get you the results that you need. I recommend that you start with my free resources, like reading my book and listening to my podcast, where I interview business and EDI leaders on best practices, which should give you plenty of inspiration to get you started. And you're always welcome to tune into my various webinars and public training that I run. If you're interested in receiving our support, then please fill out the simple application below to determine if you qualify and whether I can help you and I'm the best person to help you on your D&I journey. And if you're ready to commit, take action and to do the work necessary to improve diversity and inclusion for your organisation. After we receive your application, we'll be able to reach out to you and invite you to your planning session online. And this is where we can get to work together. We'll get really clear on your organisation's unique business case for diversity and inclusion. You'll be able to validate and sense check what you've learned in today's tutorial, and I can provide you with some further assistance if required. We can identify your number one risk or live issue by not being a diverse, inclusive employer. We can identify some of the barriers that you're trying to overcome and what you need to overcome them. We can begin your 90-day journey by creating your 90-day action plan to set yourself up for success, and then consider the things that you need to consider in Q2 and beyond. Additionally, we'll discuss why you like the inclusive growth approach and the structure of the inclusive growth flywheel, and then you can ask me any questions you like about them. So you can fill out a template with me during the session so that you've got a written record of everything that we discuss and a specific action plan that you can follow. After the session itself, one or two things will happen. Either you'll be a perfect fit for the Milden team and I'll invite you to consider being one of my clients, or if not, that's okay too, and there'll be no hard feelings or obligations. Either way, you will walk away from this session with a newfound clarity about where you are and what's keeping you from increasing diversity and inclusion in your organisation, together with the steps necessary to take action and break through your barriers. It is my goal to make this session one of the most valuable meetings for investing in your people and diversity plans this year. So go ahead and submit your simple application now, and we'll see if we're a good fit for collaborating with one another. I conduct these sessions myself and don't assign them to anybody on my team. I spend time directly with you. Since I must prioritise my work with my current clients and my deliverables for them, I'm only able to offer a limited number of sessions per month. Also, I'm building my business and growing my team so that we can have a greater impact in the world, reducing inequalities and creating workplaces that equally represent society. Therefore, I only host a limited number of sessions every month, which is one of the reasons why we have this application process to ensure that we can work with individuals who are ready to take diversity and inclusion to the next level, something that I can certainly assist you with. So if this does sound like you, and it will be a good fit for you, you can apply right now to see if you qualify and then follow the instructions on the next page. Thank you for tuning in today, and I hope that you got immense value from this tutorial, and I look forward to speaking with you further and helping you to accelerate your diversity and inclusion journey. Thank you.